Welcome back, Kotter, 1975, a Brooklyn remedial class that became a national obsession. A theme song that hit #1 on the Billboard charts, written by a musician who couldn't rhyme anything with the original title. A breakout star who was earning $2,000 an episode when he quietly stopped showing up. And a Groucho Marx guest appearance that never aired because the photos were too distressing to publish. That was Welcome Back, Kotter, a sitcom that looked like a throwaway premise and turned out to be considerably stranger behind the cameras than anything that aired on screen. Today, 15 facts about Welcome Back, Kotter, from the nickname that came from a broken thermostat, to the president who got the name wrong, to the bonus that reveals what happened to the show's creator when he finally had enough. Stick around. Fact 1. The show was originally called just Kotter, until the theme song renamed it. The original title was simple, Kotter. When producers hired John Sebastian, former lead singer of the Lovin' Spoonful, to write the theme, he spent weeks trying to make the title work. What rhymes with Kotter, otter, slaughter? Nothing landed, so Sebastian gave up on the title entirely and wrote a song about a man returning to the neighborhood where he grew up, a song he called Welcome Back. The producers loved it so much they renamed the entire show after it. The theme song that couldn't accommodate the title replaced the title. Welcome Back hit #1 on the Billboard charts. The show it named ran for 4 seasons. Fact 2. The Sweat Hogs were based on real people, practically verbatim. This was not a loosely inspired premise. Executive producer Alan Sachs had spent time with Gabe Kaplan developing the concept, and Kaplan's stand-up material about his high school years was the raw material. Vinnie Barbarino was assembled from 2 real people Sachs had actually known. Freddie Boom Boom Washington borrowed his nickname from a real classmate called Freddie Birdie Payton. Kaplan has said repeatedly that Kotter was the only genuinely fictional character in the whole show, a composite of himself and the teacher he always wished he'd had. Everything else was closer to a transcript than an invention. Fact 3. The nickname Sweat Hogs came from a broken thermostat. No focus group produced this, no writer's room brainstorm. At Kaplan's real high school, New Utrecht in Brooklyn, the remedial classes were assigned to the top floor, the only part of the building with no air conditioning. Students spent their time sweating through algebra like it was a sauna. Someone started calling them the Sweat Hogs as an insult. Kaplan liked it enough to steal it for the show. The most famous class nickname in 1970s sitcom history originated as a piece of casual cruelty directed at the kids nobody expected to succeed. Fact 4. ABC's own network head rewrote Epstein's identity. The character was originally conceived as simply a Jewish kid from Brooklyn. It was Michael Eisner, then a network executive at ABC, later the head of Disney, who suggested making him half Jewish, half Puerto Rican. His stated reasoning was that it would land funnier. Juan Epstein became one of the show's most quoted characters, with a forged note from his mother justifying every absence and every act of creative rule-bending. The character's specific cultural identity, the one that made him memorable, was a last-minute network intervention from a man who would spend the following 2 decades running the most powerful entertainment company in the world. Fact 5. Ron Palillo dressed for completely the wrong role. The casting call was for tough guys. Palillo showed up wearing tight bell-bottoms, a leather jacket, and a t-shirt, trying to project street credibility. He looked in the mirror before the audition and figured he had no shot. Then he got the script and saw the character's name, Arnold Horshack. Not a tough guy, not even close. The outfit he had assembled to play someone menacing was, by complete accident, precisely the wrong costume for the role he was about to be given. He got the part anyway. Horshack became the character audiences most frequently cited as the show's emotional core. The kid who performed stupidity to be liked, while being quietly smarter than everyone around him. Fact 6. An entire city decided the Sweat Hogs were too dangerous to broadcast. When the show premiered in September 1975, Boston was in the middle of violent unrest over court-ordered school busing. The head of the city's ABC affiliate looked at a sitcom full of loud, undereducated teenagers and made a call. Keep it off Boston television entirely. Not controversial, not delayed, banned. The irony is that the show Kaplan had originally envisioned, built on genuine ethnic diversity and the messy reality of Brooklyn public school life, was considered too incendiary for a city in the middle of its own argument about exactly those questions. Fact 7. Groucho Marx showed up on set, and the photos were never released. In 1976, the 86-year-old comedy legend agreed to appear in the Sadie Hawkins Day episode. Kaplan had been doing a Groucho impression in almost every episode, and the plan was elegant. Kotter does the bit, then the real Groucho appears to react. Marx arrived on set, barely able to walk, leaning on an assistant, seemingly unaware of where he was. The producers realized immediately he couldn't perform. He posed for a few photographs with the cast instead. Those photographs were never released. His appearance, by most accounts, was too upsetting to publish. The man who had been the model for some of the show's best material couldn't recognize the show that had been using him. Fact 8. John Travolta stopped showing up, and the writers quietly built him an off-screen life. By season 4, Travolta had Saturday Night Fever and Grease behind him. He appeared in 10 of the first 15 episodes of that season, then vanished from the remaining 8. His contract listed him as a special guest star, which gave him the flexibility to simply not be there. The writers handled it with minimal fuss. Vinnie Barbarino acquired an off-screen job and an apartment, mentioned in passing to explain the absences without disrupting continuity. The character who had been the show's central crowd pleaser became a recurring absence explained through throwaway dialogue. Travolta was still technically on the show. He just wasn't there. A theme song that renamed the show, a nickname from a broken thermostat, Groucho Marx too frail to film, and the biggest star in America quietly not showing up. We're not halfway through, still coming. Gabe Kaplan's secret he kept for the entire run. The actress who said in print that she hated the show while it was still airing. And the bonus, what happened when the creator finally walked away from his own series? Stick around. Fact 9. Gabe Kaplan wore a hairpiece for the entire run, and almost nobody knew. Kaplan has mentioned in later interviews that he had been losing his hair for a decade before the show began. He was substantially bald in front by 1975 and wore a hairpiece throughout the entire production. Very few people on the set knew about it. Because the hairpiece wasn't worn during rehearsals, some promotional photographs were taken at those sessions and showed Kaplan with significantly less hair than he had in the actual episodes. Nobody seemed to notice or comment. The recognizable thick hair that audiences associated with Mr. Kotter was not, strictly speaking, Mr. Kotter's hair. Fact 10. Marcia Strassman said in print that she hated working on the show. In a 1978 People magazine interview, the actress who played Julie Kotter did not soften her position. She said Kaplan ran hot and cold, that acting opposite him in intimate scenes was miserable, and then delivered her summary, "I hate the series." This was not said in passing. It was the headline, where the actress at the center of the domestic storyline was publicly documenting her unhappiness while the show was still in production. The 1978 interview stands as one of the more candid, mid-run assessments in the history of the American sitcom. Fact 11. Jimmy Carter confused the sweat hogs with the groundhogs and got the coast wrong. In 1977, Kaplan was invited to the White House to meet President Jimmy Carter. As Kaplan was leaving, Carter told him to say hello to the groundhogs back in California. Not sweat hogs, groundhogs, wrong animal, wrong coast, wrong show. The most watched sitcom in America was being confused by the President of the United States with a groundhog situation in a state where the show wasn't even set. Fact 12. The show's creator wanted ethnic diversity, and the producer told him nobody would care. Before the show went to air, Kaplan had a significant disagreement with executive producer James Comack about the racial and ethnic makeup of the cast. Kaplan had conceived the show as a portrait of 4 teenagers from different backgrounds who happened to be best friends, the multicultural reality of 1970s Brooklyn without any particular statement attached. Comack told Kaplan the audience wouldn't care about ethnic diversity, suggesting the characters were interchangeable in the way the kids from our gang had been. What emerged was the show Kaplan had imagined, partly by accident and partly because Eisner's specific intervention on Epstein's character pushed the ensemble toward exactly the diversity the creator had wanted. Fact 13. James Woods appeared in the pilot years before anyone knew his name. The pilot episode needed an actor to play a rival teacher named Alex Wells, the kind of polished, condescending opponent who exists in a sitcom pilot primarily to lose to the main character. The part went to a young James Woods years before the film career that would define him. The Sweat Hogs debate team beat his on the resolution that humans are naturally aggressive. Considering who was in that classroom, the topic wasn't much of a stretch. A future Oscar nominee making his television debut, being defeated by 4 fictional delinquents in a Brooklyn high school. Fact 14. Most of the original cast died before the show could celebrate major anniversaries. A cast that had been mobbed in public within weeks of the first episode airing lost most of its principles in the decades that followed. Robert Heggies died in 2012 of a heart attack at 60. Ron Palillo died the same year of the same cause at 63. Marcia Strassman died of breast cancer in 2014. John Sylvester White, behind Vice Principal Woodman's permanent scowl, had died of pancreatic cancer in 1988 at 68. It is a heavy accounting for a show built entirely on jokes. The four actors who had been on every magazine cover and in every toy store as action figures were gone before the show had been off the air for 35 years. Fact 15. The catchphrase and the board game outlasted the show by decades. "Up your nose with a rubber hose" became a playground expression shouted by children who had never watched the show. It produced a comedy album and a board game under the same name, both of which circulated through households with no particular attachment to the television program that had generated them. This is a specific measure of the show's cultural penetration. Phrases and products that had detached from their source and continued moving through American popular culture independently. The Sweat Hogs were no longer on television, the rubber hose was still in circulation, and now the bonus I've been saving for last. By the final season, Gabe Kaplan had had enough. Executive producer James Comack fired the entire writing staff and brought in the team from The Carol Burnett Show, a group with no particular connection to the Brooklyn voice and the specific rhythms of the characters Kaplan had spent years developing. The show, built from his actual high school memories, was being rewritten by people who had never been anywhere near them. Kaplan walked out after 2 episodes of the 4th season. He was still credited as the star of a show he was no longer appearing in. The producers filled the gaps with new characters. A smooth-talking Southerner added to the Sweat Hogs, Julie Kotter repurposed as a school secretary, Kotter himself promoted to vice principal in a building he was no longer actually entering. The show ran additional episodes without the person whose face was on the poster, whose name was in the title, and whose actual memories had produced the thing. Then it ended. Kaplan went on to become one of the most successful professional poker players in the world, with tournament winnings eventually exceeding $1.9 million. He still has his character's green corduroy jacket and all the scripts. He kept the material, he just stopped performing it on someone else's terms.